بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. In the last lesson we went through some of the introductions that Imam Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah he wrote before he actually went on to the first principle. And in this lesson we come to the first principle, and the first principle is the first question in the grave. And he said, فَإِذَا قِيلَ لَكْ مَنْ رَبُّكَ, that if it is said to you, who is your Lord? I.e., if on the day of resurrection, or in your grave, or even whilst you are giving da'wah, if somebody asks you, who is your Lord? Who do you believe is the Creator? فَقُلْ, then you should say, رَبِّي Allah. My Lord, He is Allah. الَّذِي رَبَّانِي وَرَبَّ جَمِيعَ الْعَالَمِينَ بِنِعَمِهِ, the one who cultivated me and cultivated the rest of creation with His blessings. So the word Rabb and Ar-Rububiyyah, it comes from this meaning, that the Rabb, He is Al-Mutafarridu bil-Khalq wal-Rizq wal-Mulk wal-Tadbir. The meaning of Rabb is the one who is unique in his creation and his provisions and his control and his ownership. This is the meaning of Ar-Rabb. Ar-Rabb, ay al-Khaliq wal-Raziq wal-Malik wal-Mudabbir. And for this reason, Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, it is for a person to single out Allah in these attributes. That Allah is the only one who creates, and the only one who provides, and the only one who controls, and the only one who owns everything. وَهُوَ مَعْبُودِي لَيْسَ لِي مَعْبُودٌ سِوَاهُ. And He is my deity of worship, and I do not have any other deity of worship besides Him. Why? Because if He is متفرد بالربوبية, if He is the one who is unique in His creation and His rizq and His mulk, then He is also to be singled out in our worship of Him. If we accept that rububiyyah is only for Allah, then we have to also accept that ubudiyyah and uluhiyyah, worship, is also the sole right of Allah. But dalilu qawluhu ta'ala, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, that Allah said all praise is due to Allah and for nobody else. It is restricted for Allah. Why? Because He is Rabbul Alameen. He is the Lord of all of the universe. And if it is said to you, how do you know your Lord? What are the signs and the indicators by which you know that your Lord is Allah, and by which you can prove the existence of Allah? Then he said, بِآيَاتِهِ وَمَخْلُوقَاتِهِ, just by looking around me. When I look around me, I see the signs of Allah and I see the creation of Allah. وَفِي كُلِّ شَيْءٍ لَهُ آيَةٌ تَدُلُّ عَلَى أَنَّهُ وَاحِدٌ. In every single thing there is a sign that He is one, that He is alone. And for this reason in the Quran, Allah often mentions the creation of the heavens and the earth, the creation of the day and night. He mentions the creation of a person himself, in order to establish to the people that if you believe that Allah is the only one who did all of this, then you must also single out Allah in your worship. So mere belief of Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, it is not sufficient. Rather, it has to be backed up with Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. And whoever thinks that the meaning of Tawheed is only Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, then this is the Tawheed of Abu Lahab and Abu Jahl. This is the Tawheed which they used to have, as we discussed previously. So from the signs and the creations of Allah is the day and the night, and the sun and the moon, and the seven heavens, and the seven earths, and that which is between them, and that which is in them. And then the author, he mentioned a number of ayat in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions His creation of everything. And He said, وَالرَّبْ هُوَ الْمَعْبُودِ. The Rabb, He is al-Ma'bud. And the meaning of al-Ma'bud, ay al-mustahiq lil-ibadah. This is the meaning of al-Ma'bud. The one who is worthy of rain from the sama. فَأَخْرَجَ بِهِ مِنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ رِزْقًا لَكُمْ. So then He produces fruit from the earth as rizq for you. فَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. So do not ascribe partners and equals to Allah. وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. And you know. But Allah didn't mention what you know. He didn't say وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ and you know X, Y, Z. He just said وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ and you know. And the ayah stops there. Meaning, and you know and you accept everything which we have just mentioned. So in these ayat, Allah mentions two main evidences to affirm His existence and His right to worship. The first evidence is you as a human being yourself. Just your creation and the creation of the rest of the humans. If you look into yourself, this is a sign of the oneness of Allah. And you notice in this ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah, the first thing Allah mentions, رَبَّكُمُ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. O people, worship your Lord who created you and created those who came before you. So this is the first evidence of the existence of Allah, and His sole right to worship is our own selves. That look at your bodies, consider your biology, and know that Allah is the one who created you, and therefore He is the one who is deserving of your worship. And then the second evidence is, after you've looked at yourself, then look around you. And when you look around you, then all of this is also an evidence of the oneness of Allah. And for this reason, after Allah mentioned الَّذِي خَلَقَكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ, in the next ayah, what did He mention? Then He started mentioning other assets of creation. He said, الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ فِرَاشًا. He made the earth a plain bed, and the sama, the skies, وَأَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً. And He sent down from the sama water. And the meaning of as-sama here is not the sky. Rather, the word as-sama, it comes from as-sumu. And the meaning of as-sumu is that which is high. So anything which is above you, it is called as-sama. And Shaykh Abdul Rahman ibn Nasr Sayyidi rahimahullah, he said that the meaning of as-sama in this ayah is clouds, not skies. So it is, first Allah made the sky over you, and then He sends water from the sama, i.e. the clouds. Because water comes from the clouds and not necessarily from the sky. But because the clouds are above us, then they are also called as-sama. And then Allah causes fruit and vegetation to grow. فَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا. So do not make for Allah andad. And the word andad is the plural of nid. And the meaning of nid is al-mathil wal-kuf, is an equal or a partner. This is the meaning of andad. وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. And you know that Allah has created you and those who came before you, and He created all of these other types of creation. Ibn Kathir rahimahullah, he said, who is the ma'bud? Who is the one who is deserving of worship? He said, الخالق لهذه الأشياء هو المستحق للعبادة. The one who created all of this which Allah has mentioned in His ayah, He is the one who is deserving of ibadah. So if a person asks you, why is it that you worship Allah and you don't worship the idols? You say, because the idols do not create and Allah creates. And the idols do not send rain from the clouds, Allah sends rain from the clouds. And it isn't the idols which cause vegetation to grow, but it is Allah who causes vegetation to grow. And therefore, the creator of all of these things, He is the one who is deserving of worship. So had it been the idols who would benefit us and harm us and answer our supplications and give and take and control life and death, then they would be deserving of worship. But even the idol worshipper, even he will accept that yes, the idols cannot do any of that. And therefore, الخالق لهذه الأشياء هو المستحق للعبادة. The creator of all of these things, he is the one of worship, of ibadah. And then the author wanted to mention that ibadah, it isn't only a salah. Rather, al-ibadah is many different things. So, al-ibadah, first of all, it is three levels. Al-Islam, wal-Iman, wal-Ihsan. And Islam is the basic level, and then Iman is a higher level, and then Ihsan is the highest level. So Al-Islam is, after saying the Shahada, it is the apparent actions. As-Salah is done in front of people. As-Zakah is physical and apparent. As-Sawm and Hajj are all physical and apparent. So if we see anybody who is fulfilling these apparent actions, then we say he is a Muslim. And it isn't allowed for us to come along and doubt a person's Islam if we see from him the physical indicators of al-Islam. He prays with us, he gives zakat, he is a Muslim. But then the level which is higher than this is the one who is not only a Muslim in his apparent action and upon his tongue, but who is also Muslim in his heart. And this is the mu'min. So the mu'min is a higher level because it combines the actions, the physical apparent actions, and also the hidden belief in the heart. And of course, al-Iman, it is the 6 pillars of Iman. Al-Iman billah, wa malaikatihi, wa rusulihi, wa kutubihi, wal yawmil akhir, wal qadri khayrihi wa sharrih. And then there is the highest level of our religion, and this is al-Ihsan. And the meaning of al-Ihsan is أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه فإن لم تكن تراه فإنه يراك. It is that you worship Allah as if you can see Him. And if you cannot see Him, then know that Allah sees you. So this ihsan, it has divided the level of piety and the level of ibadah into two types, or into two levels. One is a higher level and one is a slightly lower level. So the lower level is that you worship Allah because you know that He sees you. Meaning you are worshipping Allah because of your fear of Him. So you pray because you know Allah has obligated the prayer upon you, and if you don't pray, then Allah watches you and He will punish you. So the lower level is that which causes you to worship Allah, that which pushes you to worship Allah is your fear of Allah, because you know that He sees you. And this is ibadatul muraqaba wal khawf, the worship which is based upon the fear of Allah and holding yourself to account in front of Allah. But the level of worship which is higher than this, and this is the ibadah of the anbiya wal rusul wal awliya wal salihin, is the worship of Allah which is based on your love for Him. So you're not worshipping Allah just because you fear if you don't worship Him He's going to punish you, but you're worshipping Allah because you love to worship Him and you look forward to His reward. So that which pushes you to worship Him is your desire to seek His pleasure. It's as if you can see Allah in front of you. And this is called ibadatul talab wa shawq. Ibadatul talab wa shawq. That it is you who is desiring to worship Allah, not because it's a mere obligation, and if you don't do it, then Allah is going to punish you. And this is a higher level of worship, and this is the ibadah of the awliya and the salihin and the rusul wal anbiya. So this is, generally speaking, our religion, ad-deen. It is in 3 levels. You have al-Islam first, this is the lower level, and this is the apparent actions. Then you have al-Iman, which is a higher level, which then is also the Islam and the Iman in your heart. And then there is a highest level, which is al-Ihsan, and this is 2 levels. Firstly, a person perfects his obligation because of his fear of Allah, and this is ibadatul muraqaba wal khawf, or that you worship Allah because you want to desire the love of Allah, you desire the hope in Allah, and this is ibadatul talab wa shawq. And then he mentioned specific acts of worship. And he mentioned these acts of worship which we're going to go through because many people don't consider these acts to be ibadah. When you say to somebody ibadah, straight away they think as-salah was zakah and someone going to do hajj. But they don't think that there are other types of ibadah which are also very important, and some relate to the ibadah of the heart. He said ad-du'a, like for example supplication. Ad-du'a huwa al-ibadah. Supplication, it is ibadah. Wal khawf, and also fear. Fearing Allah is also an act of worship. Wal raja, and hope. So having hope in Allah is an act of ibadah. Wat tawakkul, and reliance and dependence. A person relying upon Allah and depending upon Allah, this is ibadah. Wal raghbatu wal rahbah, and desiring, having desire in Allah and having awe and fear of Allah, this is also ibadah. Wal khushu' wal khashya wal inaba, all of these are different types of ibadah. Submission and tranquility and awe and humility and inaba, turning to Allah in repentance, all of this is ibadah. And also seeking help. Isti'ana, it is a type of ibadah. And isti'adha, seeking refuge, is a type of ibadah. Al-istighatha, seeking rescue. When you are in a problem and you seek rescue, this is a type of ibadah. And also slaughtering and taking vows and oaths. وَغَيْرُ ذَلِكَ مِنْ أَنْوَاعِ الْعِبَادَةِ, and all of the other types of ibadah. الَّتِي أَمَرَ اللَّهُ بِهَا كُلُّهَا لِلَّهِ, which Allah has ordered that all of these acts of worship, they have to be made for Allah alone. And what's important to understand here is a general principle. That if we say dua, supplicating and calling out is ibadah, and if we say al-isti'ana, seeking help is ibadah, and seeking refuge is ibadah, and then we say that any act of ibadah can only be for the sake of Allah. So therefore, is it not allowed for us to call out to another person? Is it not allowed for me to even ask help from one of you? Or to seek refuge in one of your houses? Is none of this allowed? And the answer is that dua and isti'ana and isti'adha and all of this seeking help and refuge, it is two main types. There is that which is sought from Allah alone, and there is also something which is allowed to be sought from the rest of creation. And you can only seek help from creation or seek refuge in creation if 4 conditions are met. If you fulfill these 4 conditions, then it is allowed for you to make isti'ana of people. I seek help from the people. So the first condition is that the one you are asking for help has to be hayy. He has to be living. So if he is dead, then you cannot ask him for help. And if he is dead and you seek refuge in him, or you seek rescue from him, or you seek help from him, then this becomes shirk, a shirk al-akbar. The second condition is he has to be hadir. He has to be present in front of you. Or at the least, that you have to be able to communicate to him. So for example, if there was a person who was living and I wanted his help, but he's not in England, let's say he's in Pakistan, it's not allowed for me to seek out and say, oh Fulan, please help me, and he cannot hear me. Of course, if it was through communication of phones, that's a different situation. But he has to be present or reachable. And the third condition is he has to be qadir. And the meaning of qadir is he has to have the ability to help you. And therefore, if there is a person who is alive and he's in front of you and he's present, but he doesn't have the ability to help you, then you're not allowed to ask him for help. And this becomes a shirk. And then the fourth condition is, and this is important, that you have to believe this person whom you are seeking help from, who is alive and present and he's able, but he's only a cause which Allah has placed upon the earth. So for example, when you go to the doctor and you have an illness, the doctor is living the doctor is present, the doctor is able because he's qualified, so he gives you medicine. Now the fourth condition is when you take that medicine, if you believe that it is the medicine and the doctor which cured you, it is shirk. But if you believe, no, that this medicine and this doctor is only a cause which Allah has placed upon the earth, and Allah is the really one who cures, then this is at-tawheed. So these are the four conditions that must be fulfilled when it comes to seeking help from other than Allah. It has to be somebody who is al-hayy, living, al-hadir, present, al-qadir, have the ability, and he is only a sabab, a cause which Allah has placed upon this earth. Not that that person in of himself is benefiting you or harming you. All of this goes back to Allah. And anything besides this, it becomes a shirk. So when the Prophet ﷺ said to Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, إِذَا سَأَلْتَ فَاسْأَلِ اللَّهِ, when you ask, only ask Allah. وَإِذَا اسْتَعَنْتَ فَاسْتَعِنْ بِاللَّهِ, and when you seek help, only seek the help of Allah. Then that is when these conditions are not fulfilled. Otherwise, if you look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ, all of it is centered around Muslims helping each other. The Prophet ﷺ would ask the companions to help him, the companions would ask the Prophet ﷺ to help them, and so on and so forth. And this enters into وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى, helping each other and cooperating with each other upon righteousness and upon piety. Also, when it comes to al-khawf, fear, wal-mahabba and love, and al-raja, hope, then again there are two main types. There is the khawf and the raja and the mahabba which can only be for the sake of Allah. And this is the absolute pure love which can only be for Allah. And the absolute fear which is only for Allah. And the absolute hope which is only in Allah. But at the same time, it is allowed for us to love and fear and have hope in the rest of creation, with the conditions being fulfilled, and also if it is that which is natural. Meaning, the nature which Allah has created people upon is that they fear certain things. So you fear a snake, for example, you're scared to touch a fire. And this isn't because you believe that it is the fire which is in control of the universe, but it is a cause which Allah has placed. That if you touch this fire, you will get burnt, so be scared of the fire. And also love. Allah has naturally placed in the hearts of the people love. So the mother will love her son and daughter even if they are kuffar and she is a Muslim. She cannot stop that love for her children. And a son loves his father even if his father is a kafir, but that love will remain. Why? Because this is a natural love which Allah has placed in the hearts of the people, over which you have no control. And therefore al-hubb al-tabi'i, natural love and natural fear over which there is no control, this is not a shirk. But it can become haram when this natural love, it stops you doing an obligation which Allah has ordered you to do. Or this fear of your father, for example, it stops you from fulfilling an obligation which Allah has fulfilled you to, Allah has obligated upon you that you fulfill. And if you love somebody like the love of Allah, then this becomes a shirk and kufr. And if you fear, for example, the jinn, like your fear of Allah, then this becomes kufr and shirk. So if a person fears the jinn, just the natural fear, just like you're scared of a thief, and you're scared of a gangster, and you're scared of the fire or a snake, then this is al-khawf al-tabi'i. This is natural fear which a person has. But if you fear them like you fear Allah, because you know Allah is the one who gives life and death, and you think in their hands is life and death, independent of Allah, then this becomes a shirk and it becomes al-kufr. So the point is that all of these acts of worship which we mentioned, which the author mentions, and any other act of worship, it has to be sincerely for the sake of Allah and only directed to Allah, except in those cases that Allah has allowed a worldly level of seeking help or loving and fearing with the conditions which we have mentioned. And then he mentioned various ayat and ahadith in order to establish that these things which he has mentioned, like dua and khawf and raja and tawakkul, all of them are acts of worship. So he mentions, for example, that the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ad-du'a mukhul ibadah," and the authentic hadith is, "Ad-du'a huwa al-ibadah." Ad-du'a, it is worship. He mentioned the ayah. Allah says, فَلَا تَخَافُوهُمْ وَخَافُونِي إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. Do not fear them, but fear me if you are truly believers. So he linked iman to having khawf, and therefore khawf is an act of worship. Unlike this, over the next few statements and sentences, he mentioned various evidences that each one of these types of actions are all acts of worship. Up until he finished with this, and then he went to al-asl al-thani, the second principle. And of course, the second principle, which is there's no page numbers in here. The second principle is the second question in the grave. And the second question in the grave is وَمَا دِينُكَ? What is your religion? And therefore the second principle is مَعْرِفَةُ دِينِ الْإِسْلَامِ بِالْأَدِلَّةِ. It is knowing the religion of Islam with the evidences. First of all, what is the meaning of Islam? He says that the meaning of Islam is al-istislamu lillahi bit-tawheed. It is for a person to submit himself completely in front of Allah with at-tawheed. وَالْإِنْقِيَادُ لَهُ بِالطَّاعَةِ. And it is to comply to the obedience of Allah. وَالْبَرَاءَةُ مِنَ الشِّرْكِ وَأَهْلِهِ. And it is to free yourself from shirk and the people of ash-shirk. And this, my brothers and sisters, it teaches us the mistake of those people who sometimes try to discuss with the kuffar or debate with the kuffar, and they say the meaning of Islam, it is peace. Islam means peace, and this is incorrect. Yes, peace is a part of al-Islam, but al-Islam doesn't mean peace, because there is a difference between al-Islam and as-salam. So as-salam means peace, but al-Islam, it doesn't mean peace. Al-Islam, it means al-istislamu lillahi bit-tawheed. It means for a person to submit himself completely in front of Allah with at-tawheed. And therefore, without tawheed, a person cannot be a Muslim. So if a person commits an act of shirk, he leaves the fold of al-Islam. وَالْإِنْقِيَادُ لَهُ بِالطَّاعَةِ. And then from Islam is showing obedience to Allah. A person cannot say, I am a person of Tawheed because I have memorized the three categories of Tawheed, but I don't worship Allah. So I don't pray and I don't fast, but I know the three categories of Tawheed and its definition. This person is not a muwahid. A muwahid is a person who knows Tawheed and then he worships Allah upon Tawheed. And pay attention, brothers, a person will never enter into Jannah because of his knowledge. Just because he knows, he will never enter into Jannah. He will only enter into Jannah after the virtue of Allah because of the actions which he used to do. So yes, we have to worship Allah upon knowledge and not upon ignorance, but it isn't knowledge which enters a person into Jannah, it is actions which enters a person into Jannah. And Allah said in the Quran, Udkhulul jannata bima kuntum ta'malun. Enter into Jannah due to that which you used to do, i.e. those amal, those actions which you used to do. Allah did not say in this ayah, Udkhulul jannata bima kuntum ta'lamun. Enter into Jannah according to what you know. Rather, He said, enter into Jannah according to that which you used to do, i.e. the actions which you used to do. And then after this he mentioned that the religion, it is three levels: al-Islam, wal-Iman, wal-Ihsan. And we explained previously the meaning of Islam, the meaning of Iman, and the meaning of Ihsan. Al-Islam, of course, is 5 pillars, the 5 pillars of Islam: Shahadat la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammad Rasulullah wa iqam as-salah wa ita'i zakah wa sawmi Ramadan wa hajj al-bayt. And Iman is the 6 pillars of Iman. Al-Iman billahi wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusulihi wal yawmil akhir wal qadri khayrihi wa sharrihi. And Al-Ihsan is, as I mentioned, and ta'bud Allah ka'annaka tarah, that you worship Allah as if you can see Him. And if it's not like this, then you should know that Allah sees you. And the meaning of La ilaha illallah is La ma'buda bihaqqin illallah. The meaning of La ilaha illallah is La ma'buda, there is no deity worthy of worship, bihaq, truly worthy of worship, illallah, except Allah. So the meaning, some Muslims, because of their ignorance of Tawheed, they think the meaning of La ilaha illallah is La khaliqa illallah. They think that La ilaha illallah, it means there is no creator but Allah. And a person who thinks this, then his Tawheed is the Tawheed of Abu Lahab and Abu Jahl. Because they used to believe there is no creator besides Allah. They used to believe He is one who gives life and death. But the meaning of La ilaha illallah is that you single out Allah in your worship. That He is the only one who is deserving of your worship. And La ilaha illallah, it has 2 pillars. One pillar is La ilah, in which you negate any God. What time is it? La ilah is when you negate any other God. You disbelieve in all of the other gods. And then illallah is the second pillar, when you affirm the oneness of Allah. So a person has to combine both La ilah and illallah. You have to disbelieve in all of the false deities, and then you have to also believe in Allah. And he mentioned, the author, in the next pages, he mentioned the evidence for the prayer